Welcome, everyone. Dr. Thor here. Get ready for Christ consciousness. Well, I'm going to talk about today the book, The Son of Sam and Me. The truth about why I wasn't shot by David Berkowitz by Carl Denaro with Brian Whitley. This is an interesting book, which I think sums up the whole Son of Sam situation, what was going on very well in a fair number of pages without getting too detailed and, quite frankly, very boring. I don't know why people are interested in this particular crime situation. Of course, David Berkowitz, the son of Sam, who was the gunman in several killings, is still alive. People are still talking to him. The entire area, apparently, of Yonkers is a pit hole from hell, and most of the places around there, particularly Riverdale and other places, which seem to harbor freaks to this day. So, Carl Denaro is an interesting guy. He was local there at a bar. He just was getting ready to go into the Air Force, had passed his test, had went through everything, and had a month or two off. So it shows, of course, that he passed the Air Force test, which is something that does take a little intelligence. Apparently today he is a telecommunications analyst. Did I get that right? I'm not sure, but he's some sort of analyst for a company, and that's what he's doing today. Now, he decided to leave that bar that night in, I believe it was Yonkers. That don't hold me to any of the details. It's not worth me writing all this down. But he went out and was tooling around and was him with his girlfriend, and he was shot. And one of the, I think he's the only survivor, or was there somebody else? But one of these survivors, he was shot in the head. He has a metal plate in there, so it's amazing he survived at all. So he was one of the victims of the 44 shooter, and this was a 44 Bulldog, not a Magnum, which Clint Eastwood's famous for. The 44 Magnum, the world's most powerful handgun. So the whole idea is, this of course started his saga on what's happening. Now apparently after that he recovered. He's had some permanent damage. He's doing amazingly well considering somebody shot you in the head. He has a few problems and vision problems apparently, but is doing quite well from what we can see here and functioning fairly well through the whole situation. Now, apparently after that, and I'm not sure how much time after the shooting the book came out, but The Ultimate Evil by Maury Terry came out. And this is what Carl Denaro, being one of the victims, was read and started working with Maury Terry. Now, I don't know if he worked with him before that or not. I'm not sure. It apparently seems to be. So he read this book. He contacted Maury Terry as well as a bunch of other people. Maury Terry lived in the area as well of where the shootings were in general and wrote this big book on it, which gave a excellent detail of the basic shootings, the investigations, etc., to a good degree. The first half of the book is pretty educational and shows you what happened. Of course, there's a lot of things here that is covered up, that isn't emphasized. And the second half of the book, he went and started talking about his actual beliefs of who was involved in this, because basically the book said that this was not a lone gunman, that this involved some sort of group that was doing this for terror reasons. We're not really sure what is the motive behind this, because it certainly doesn't help a group to do this, or I'm not sure what they think chaos happens. It basically puts more police on the street, makes people more aware. I still don't quite understand what the great point of it was, but he went into the fact tying in Manson, tying in the Process Church, without really getting into the core of things, because everything is known by the police departments that refuse to release the information. And if people aren't arrested, it's because the police corruption. It's just as simple as that, and that's because corruption went very high in this case. And there apparently is all sorts of pedophiles that are been operating for 100 years, hundreds of years probably. This is nothing new, pedophilia, to begin with. And there was a sign in an ancient Roman resort that this was the place to party and where little boys could become little girls. Now, this is written on a sign in a Roman, basically, party area or resort. So, this is nothing new, and all of these things of younger children were done by the Spartans. The samurais are famous for it. So there's all of this history of younger children being involved in cultures. And strange and bisexual behavior is very common throughout history. It was thought that actual Alexander the Great was involved with men, women, and even what we consider transsexuals today. So who knows? It's a funny world out there, and we've made things into a tight little box. But obviously, pedophilia is not something that can be in any way divorced. People have to be able to make their own decisions. But we also must remember that most places, 16 is the age to commit to something sexual. It's not one. So in Japan, it's 14. So these are all part of it. So, but we're talking about people who are abducted, raped, and put into sexual slavery by very wealthy, controlled people. They've been linked to everything from the CIA to satanic cults all over. We just don't know what's going on here, but there seems to be an overwhelming evidence of underground pedophilia cults that involve, and there's money in this. There's a lot of money in this. And one of the problems is that nobody wants to go to the police department because it's so horrible of a crime. So it takes care of itself, but there must be a huge amount of money in it. And there's been so many different reports and linking these things, of course, to Satanism. And of course, that's part of it. But, these are criminals that want to sexually abuse children, and they want to then have this other aspect of it too. The actual number of real Satanists involved in this type of things, just by the number of Satanists, is fairly low. But the amount of organized crime that are involved in this, that are also have, quote, occult backgrounds, is ginormous. Street gangs are all involved in this. The police work with them. It goes on, and that's the core problem here. But I've talked about that so much. But, other people aren't. Maury Terry was supposed to come out with a second book that never materialized, and what he was given, what was seen of his new edition was pathetic garbage. But I would expect that. Maury Terry knew nothing about occultism, nothing about Satanism. He's a guy that went to Catholic high school and Catholic college. Now let's get back to Denaro. And that is the fact is that so he got together with Maury Terry and was helping him doing research and developed a relationship with him. And apparently Maury Terry did this with a bunch of people, and he gave them strange information as he was some sort of spy, protecting everything he knew for personal profit. Because that's the only reason you do this. He didn't want anything to get out. That was the way he made his money. He made most of his money from Shock TV and particularly from the National Enquirer and like tabloids. That's right, because he didn't do anything. He wrote one book his entire life and didn't follow up on that even when there was interest. I'm not sure he could get it published, the second edition anyway. There was talk that he actually went to Fertile House Publishing, which is known to be a black magic publishing house that publishes Satanists and other things. It was stated by somebody who knew them that he tried to get his second book published through them. Well, isn't that kind of weird? Most likely the regular publishers would not publish him again. I don't know how many copies that book sold. Assuming The Ultimate Evil is the name of the book. I don't know how much of that sold. I think it was a bestseller, etc. But that doesn't mean you're going to get another book out of that. Certainly now you would, because there seems to be this great interest in these kind of things, particularly by affluent women who seem to have nothing better to do. Now, this is really a dead case. The only reason I'm interested in it, because it still hooks into what the core reality is going on here, and that's the activities of satanic cults, which is something I specialize in and have been investigating even now further some of the famous cases, and this is one of them, as well as the Presidio case, Michael Aquino, and their like. So there's what is going on there? What is the facts? What can we find out about? And as usual, research is very, very difficult. And the people doing it are bozos. They are people that don't really understand what they're doing. They have a wall of prejudices and blockages that stop them from finding the truth. And this is what we have out there. Now, he did some research. He worked closely with Maury Terry. Carl, he claimed he was a friend. Well, I don't think Terry had many friends. And certainly from what the stories I've heard from Carl in particular, is that they weren't really friends. He spent time with him, but Maury Terry used everybody. He didn't even know how to use the computer for a long period of time and had have to have other people do that work. But that was that transition time. He finally did get into that apparently, but he needed a lot of people to do research, and Carl was one of them. Now, when there was a second edition coming out, or at least a ending chapter of that, where there was some conclusions drawn, everybody in the team was sent this information except Carl. So I don't know why Carl thinks he's a good buddy of this guy, because other people in the team were sent his final statements, which apparently, per Carl, who got a copy from someone else, not from Murray, from someone else that was working there, said that that last chapter had absolutely nothing in it. There was no names, no nothing, as Maury Terry said. He was going to name names, like hell he would. I don't think he knew anything. Probably he was frightened, and he most likely was a disinformation agent for the opposition who blackmailed him or threatened him, etc. So, because his conclusions move people off the track of really what's happening. Now, the problem is everybody has bought into Maury Terry's fantasy reality of what's going on, which doesn't do any of us any justice. We want to find out what really is happening, who was involved, and not just throw darts into the sky, and wherever they land, well, that person is guilty. Now, Maury Terry knew nothing trying to link Manson and the Process Church and everybody else into these things. It's just fantasy. You know, it's amazing how Manson is linked into everything, yet he spent 90% of his life in prison. He wasn't able to do all that much. He had a certain following for a short period of time, but he got into these murder charges and got put away. And he's been in prison 80% of his life. And he had his own little hippie family when it was popular then, and was able to do whatever he wanted. But he foolishly got involved in more and more crime, more and more drugs, and everything else. While he had everything he really wanted on his little ranch there, hot and cold running babes, everything he could possibly want was there. But then he had to get into selling drugs and other things, which is what those Tate murders were all about. And the fantasy that he wanted to start some race, that was nice, trying to cover up those things. That was a failure to pay their bills, which Hollywood is famous for. Now, trying to connect him with everybody is a little bit ridiculous. And what they try and do is use things that sound like it is not something would happen, like everybody was in San Francisco, they were on a street close to each other. Manson was 8 or 9 streets, quite a bit. This is a city now. I don't know quite a bit, but a fair length away from where Process Church had a place. Well, that's where all the people stayed. They stayed in that area. It's not unusual. Now, there really is no link between Manson and anybody. I've just heard recent statements that, that he was heavily involved in Scientology. And this is where he learned how to manipulate people. Well, this doesn't seem to be entirely true, and it's unlikely. One person told me that Manson learned his Scientology stuff probably from prison and didn't pay a nickel, because it's very expensive to go through Scientology. So I don't know what the real story there is, but and he has the nerve to say that he got to the cleared level in Scientology, which would have cost him a fortune. But, Scientology is another organization with a very bizarre background, so we don't really know what's going on there either. But Maury Terry and, of course, Carl Denaro picked up the fact of the same kind of fake conspiracy, that everything boiled down to the Process Church. But, of course, just like Michael Aquino, there's absolutely no evidence against them whatsoever. And they've been going on for 30 or 40 years, and not a single charge has been brought against any of the major members, including Michael Aquino, who had one charge brought against him that was dropped. And all the years after that, absolutely nothing. So we've got a serious problem here. And we can't go around headhunting, grabbing people because we don't like them. Going after Manson. Well, who can like Manson? Michael Aquino's another weird guy. I mean, these are people that are not very likable. But the point is, just because we don't like them doesn't mean that they are committing heinous acts and that they should be lynched. And that's, of course, what we're talking about here. We have to be very careful. The Process Church turned into Best Friends Animal Sanctuary, which is taking care of thousands of animals, tens of thousands, really, because they have connections to so many animal shelters. Their goal is to stop the killing of animals entirely, and they've been doing this for like 25, 30 years now. So they are doing good work here, and there's basically nothing negative about them in general, except as a typical organization. What's interesting is all these animal federation and protective services seem to have dirty hands. They treat people terrible. They're involved in bad practices. They're top heavy in terms of executives getting paid a lot of money. It's the same old story. And of course, Best Friends has not escaped that either. They don't treat their employees very well. And these animal sanctuary groups are very much like cults. They have people lining up to help animals, and they treat them like garbage. And, of course, they don't have enough staff, so there is an indirect, if not kind of direct abuse in general of all these animal sanctuaries because they really don't have the money and the personnel to take care of the animals properly. So there's a lot of complaints about them online from employees, and they run a pretty bad organization, and they're very top-heavy. In terms of fact, the people at the top, which are still the same people, ironically, that are from the Process Church, or a lot of them, are paying themselves huge salaries, etc. And they're paying the workers that have to do everything mediocre wages and overworking them horribly. Well, what's new? Isn't that what all the cults are? And they all seem to do that, including PETA, World Wildlife Fund, which has been linked to criminal activities. It goes on and on. I think we should start looking for more criminal activities instead of trying to hang the same old people that haven't been able to find a zero thing about them in 40 years. And that includes Michael Aquino, who is now passed, and the Animal Sanctuary, who their main leader, Mary Ann, who was the head of the initial organization, has died about 2005. So that's almost 20 years ago. And of course, they still have some of the original members running that, ironically. And it's a very nepotistic organization. They keep it to a select few people. And that's very interesting as well because it's another way to hide activities. But we don't know what's going on. They're a $100 million organization. So that's how much they take in every year. $100 million. Unbelievable amounts of money. Where it all goes and everything else. But I'm going to be covering that and something else. Let's go back to this whole Carl Denaro case. Now, Carl Denaro, again, listened to fools, and while he's a relatively intelligent person, listening to Maury Terry, the high school, the Catholic high school and Catholic college graduate that knew nothing about occultism, has no background in Satanism, apparently didn't even talk to anybody in there. There's no references to that. He read books that were typically witchcrafty type books that he was reading to figure out what was going on. I don't think there was a single book on Satanism at the time that he was researching. And apparently he didn't talk to anybody either. And none of these people involved in the Son of Sam have contacted a single person who knows anything about the occult at any kind of level whatsoever. They have inexperienced children. They don't look, period. They have no idea. They want to close their eyes. There's no interviews with anybody that has that background. I don't know if they tried to get someone from the Best Friends Animal to talk about their past. I doubt they would do that, but nobody has ever contacted any kind of occult groups and have interviews with them into regards to this. They're not asking them any questions. They haven't contacted somebody from the Church of Satan. Now, I don't know if anybody maybe somebody has contacted, but they never even mentioned this. And Carl Denaro's made a lot of misstatements on several interview shows that he was on. Still keeping in mind the bogus reality of the so-called process church, which hasn't been around for like 50 years. Even before it became the animal sanctuary, it had stopped doing the bizarre things they were doing to get attention. They stopped wearing robes. They called themselves different names. You got to remember, they started off as a Scientology organization that they broke away from. But they learned a lot there, including how to make a bunch of money like Scientology did, and they were able to fill their pockets for a long time. So there still is some question there, and there still is were there some radical sects of the process church that were involved in criminal acts. Now, nobody has, there's just, again, the same gossip. Oh, Bill, the process church guy, well, he was at a meeting. What does that mean to me? That doesn't have anything. That's hearsay from one individual, and we don't know how well that person remembered, whether that person was really connected to the process church. The process church was everywhere. They were trying to make money, and they were making lots of money. They were in all the big cities. They were an obnoxious group wearing weird uniforms and so forth. But that wasn't really the case all that long. People like to point to that, but we have pictures of them with George Wallace, the governor at the time, and they're wearing suits and ties. And they're not wearing they're wearing Stars of David. So all this stuff that you hear about was at a certain beginning stage of the process church. And to think that they were involved in all these things, I think is, again, it's a red herring. They keep pointing at them because they were everywhere. They were obnoxious. They were easily identifiable. So if you were involved in something, particularly if you were involved in some sort of satanic murder group, well, you would scream, it's the process church. Didn't you see those freaks on the streets yesterday? Wasn't me. This is exactly what happened. The same thing apparently has happened with Michael Aquino, who once he went on TV, well, everybody started to identify him as the Satan dude. This is the same thing that happened with extraterrestrials. Once they made a TV movie and showed the Greys, well, everybody started to see Greys. We have to be very careful that we don't get caught in these realities, and we then are basically pushed down a path where we're getting a bunch of bad information and the real culprits are getting away with it. And that's exactly what's happening. Because none of these people, I don't know if they can spell the word research, but they certainly don't know how to do research. They have not done anything. They keep going to Berkowitz and expecting him to give them information. They keep going back to the same corrupt cops that never gave you any decent information and trying to get that. They're not looking. You want to find Satanists? Well, look into Satanism and the satanic cults that are out in these areas now. Follow those. What are they doing? They won't do that. They're scared to death. So they're trying to find people that were 50 years ago and talking to their daughters, their What is this nonsense? I mean, it's cute after a couple of things, but, it's a little bit ridiculous, and there's no way you can do it. And the people doing this research just are so ignorant, it isn't even funny. So, and they continue to push the same ridiculous buttons trying to blame the process church for everything when they're not connected. And this is just complete nonsense, and there is none. It's all based on Bill said this, Dan said this, the shoeshine guy at the Waldorf Astoria, the guy who owned a store in Yonkers. It's just nonsense. There's nothing there. And if there is any kind of real situations, real evidence, real criminal activity, well, the police department is refusing to do anything. And people have investigated in this case, and many other ones, have been told to retire, taken it off, they've closed the case. I mean, the story goes on of that even the records for this again have been destroyed, burnt, etc. There's always something happening. So there's really something going on here underneath everything else that is definitely being covered up. Now, this is never going to happen until we handle corruption again, but we're certainly not going to find anything from the researchers that are out there right now. They're all amateurs. They know absolutely nothing. They get bad information and keep building on that. They follow idiot belief systems that Maury Terry put together that knew nothing. Well, maybe put the pieces together of what happened with the police department, etc. But he certainly didn't go past that and knows nothing. I mean, this is about satanic crimes and organized crime groups. That's what it's about. What do you know about it?
I went to Catholic church. Oh, witches and demons.
I mean, this is the kind of stupidity you get. And this has been continued on. And unfortunately, Carl Denaro's not too much better. His friend, what a joke that is, Maury Terry, certainly gave him information that he tends to believe and follow. That is completely bogus. 40 years of the Process Church, nothing. So let's get off this nonsense. If you think you're going to get Berkowitz to tell you anything, or we should believe anything from that psychopath who started over 1,500 fires, hit his head 5 or 6 times, was a disciplinary punk problem in school. It goes on and on of this guy's long history torturing animals that he did all his life. This guy is a complete sociopath, and the fact that he's kind of likable makes him more dangerous. But he's not going to give any of this information out there if he even knows it, but I don't think he knows much anyway. And then most people in this case now, because it's 40 years old, are all dead or dying, and it means nothing. You're not going to get anybody to open up a case and get information, even if there is strong information, to somehow do anything here. And what are you going to link? We know where all the satanic churches are, where they're operating, the street gangs that follow it. We know all of them. I can give you a complete list of them. The bottom line is, what are you doing about it? You're not investigating that because you people are cowards. You're not going to look into it. So the whole idea, as long as things fit into your little perspective, which is ignorant. And as I said, Carl Denaro seems like an okay guy, but he made a whole bunch of bad statements on interview shoes. He did 2 long interviews, and he really didn't know anything. And again, it was all the fact that, it's the Process Church. Where? Let's have the charges. And, this is, of course, what Aquino and Anton LaVey's daughter, Zena, did on actually when they were interviewed on Geraldo Rivero's show, when they were talking about these satanic cults. And they say, well, where's the charges? Where's the evidence? Let's see it. Where are the prosecutions? Where are the arrests? 0. Absolutely 0. And they know nothing about the animal sanctuary, which was formed 30 years ago. They haven't looked into that. They don't know if anything's going on there. They want to, again, push suspicion of this can be, well, it doesn't make sense with that. What do you know about running an animal sanctuary? That's the kind of stupid investigators that are out there that look in legal cases to try and find information because that's so easy to find. And there are all these records out there. Their conclusions are so bizarre, it isn't even funny. And they're wrong, and they have no proof of any. Yeah, Billy over here, tell me that. Yeah. This is the kind of crap you get. There is no hard evidence against anything. And the fact that people come out and say it was the colonel or this guy after he was plastered all over TV is just a convenient way of having people buy what you say. Now, there are interesting books and everything else on some of this stuff. People have reported things, some really wild stuff. I'm going to cover that in another talk here. But this, I would recommend this book if you're interested in the Son of Sam and you're interested in conspiracies and satanic practices or groups that may be out there. This is a good book, but remember, any kind of conclusions in this book are worthless because the people writing it and interested in it don't have any background whatsoever, and they never talk to anybody that does. So they come to their own conclusions to fit their own purposes, and we need to fully understand that. But this is a pretty good book. It's an interesting. Carl has put a lot of time in investigating this, but the problem is that if you don't have the knowledge to come to the right conclusion, it doesn't matter how much evidence you gather. When you put it all together, you come to the wrong conclusion. And this is what happens in so many areas out there. So as long as these people continue to do horrible research, as long as they continue not to research the core situation, corruption, satanic cults. What are they doing? They're not researching any of that. And they don't want to really get involved with that because that's kind of dangerous and scary. So they go to the same person who is not dangerous and scary because he's in a cell, David Berkowitz, and old retired police that basically do nothing back then and they do nothing now. But these are safe people to talk to. Have they talked to anybody else? Have they talked to representatives of different groups to find out what's going on? And that means satanic groups? No. Do they know anything about it? No. People to call the Process Church was not a satanic organization. They didn't use one satanic symbol. They were obnoxious to begin with, and it didn't get them that far, but they did okay because they ran around in robes and with dogs and wore crosses, regular Christian crosses. The only thing different is they had a dragon in the center of that cross representing Satan and Christ, and the higher and lower self that needed to be united. That's not really a new concept, by the way. They took an old concept and they made a lot of money with it. And then they figured out to do it. Now, I don't know if they got all that training from Scientology or not. It is still kind of a mystery where all their money came from. But the bottom line is nobody has ever put a single charge on these people. Just like Micah Aquino, he had one charge against him that was dropped. And the army refused to pay the complainant against him. They sued civilly, and then they were able to get a tiny amount civilly. But there was money involved there, and Aquino was accused by an army chaplain. And all these things don't add up. Now, the bottom line is that we need to find out who's doing this. And if we're chasing what are weird weird people, and not looking for the actual perpetrators, we're doing everybody a horrible disservice, and that's what we've done. Because the people that did all this stuff, the gangs, the satanic murder cults, are all in operation today. Because you've been chasing a group that's been taking care of animals for 30 years. You've been chasing a goofy guy who's in the military with no proof against him whatsoever, while the real perpetrators are out there doing it. I mean, this kind of ignorant, buffoonish activity is really disgusting, and they have the nerve, even some of these who claim to be professional researchers, are really the bottom of the barrel. Until next time.